Okay, hello photographers. Welcome to the second in-studio photo blab. I'm here in my studio. Mark is in Canada. Ontario? Toronto.
Yeah.
Ontario.
Yeah, Ontario.
In his studio. And we are connected with you across the great thing called the internet, which is really amazing. And tonight we are again talking about lighting. This has been a really popular topic. So while we wait a minute or so for people to join up and hop into the chat, let's just recap like we usually do, Mark, with our week in photography. And if you want to start, go right with it, man. What have you been up to this week?
Well, this week I haven't really done much photography-wise, like actually taking pictures, but I'm in the process of setting up a shoot with a model I've worked with before, Kelly. She's actually been published quite a few times, and first time I shot with her, I actually paid her because it was when I was first starting to learn lighting and stuff like that. So she was sort of a guinea pig for me, for lack of a better term. And she saw a picture of an old truck that I posted on Instagram, and she really liked the idea of doing some sort of a retro or a lingerie type shoot with this truck. And so I talked to the people who own the truck. It's an abandoned truck on someone's property, but I talked to them and they were cool with it. So now we just have to set up a date and then do this. So it's going to be a fun shoot. I can't wait.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds really cool. We got to give a shout out to Christian and Sandy and Bill and Peter and let's see, Lexus Poppy. That's Eddie, right? Right? I think I remember that now. And Vincent's here, and Emmanuel's here, and TC and Penny. Welcome everybody. As usual, we love it when you join us, and we appreciate you spending your time. Oh, Rob's here as well. Awesome.
Yeah, cool.
So my week has been intense. The last few weeks, really. I've been recording videos like mad for the post-processing course. And there are currently 17 videos in the course, and I'm not even done yet. I've still got another easily 5 to 10 videos to go to complete this thing. And that's just the main course. And I usually like to try to put together a nice bonus section as well. So that's what I've been doing. Like I've been upstairs in front of my computer, facing a camera, recording and editing videos.
Just chugging away at it.
Just chugging away. And I tell you what, like it's awesome, but at the same time, you know, you get to that point where you sort of like you're working on something and you're getting like worn out and exhausted and you want to keep going because you want to do more work, but you can't because your body can't take it. I was like, whoo, I got like that the other day and I was like, okay, I just need to take a break. Oh, and Paul just joined us. Hello to Jeff. And it is Eddie. Awesome. And Vanessa is here as well. Speaking of shoots, though, before we jump into the lighting stuff, I've also got... Oh, I got to turn off my heater. I'll just let it run. I've also got a shoot coming. I've just been talking with a local-ish to me model. She lives about an hour and a half away, which seems to be the case for the majority of the models that I work with. Angela is the localist model that I have that I work with regularly. And I love working with her, of course. But I'm really excited to work with this new model. And the concept we're talking about is, surprise, surprise, glitter and paint. So that means I'm going to make another giant mess here in my studio, which I guess just seems to be the thing that I do.
Par for the course.
Right. So I want to say hello to Candy. She just joined us. And we're going to start now talking about flash photography. So here's
Wait, can I ask one quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Your course that you're working on, when all's said and done, how long are you expecting it to actually be?
I mean, localist, Peter said. Yeah.
That's about it.
That's my made-up word. It's... Like in terms, are you talking in hours or quantity of videos?
I guess hours. Like if somebody purchases it,
it's gonna be. Let's see. I've got, like I said, 17 videos right now. The average probably length per video is about 8 to 10 minutes, I think. So, I mean, that right there is about 2 hours.
Right. And you're not even done.
So by the time I'm done, it'll probably be close to 3. But here's the thing, like, I'm not trying to make the course big just to make it big so I can say like, oh my God, I've got 3 hours worth of video content. You should pay me $40 bajillion for it, right? Rather, it's, you know, I'm trying to give like all of the pertinent and necessary information in terms of the function of Lightroom and how to use this software, because that's, you know, that's important aspect number 1. And then the videos that I'm about to start working on is aspect number 2, which is, okay, now that I know how to use this software, what the heck do I do with it, right? And that's going to be a harder part to do, because that's always a bit more abstract, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to the challenge, and I'm looking forward to finishing this course. Christian said an optical frame line is interested in my photography for product shots. That is super cool.
That's awesome.
That is like virtual high five for that, man. That is awesome.
Yeah, exactly.
Those kinds of stories. Yeah, and we want to know, like, what have you guys been up to? Share your week in photography with us. Candy says she's been back to work, but she's picking up more jobs and other workers. And then she says to say hey to Lisa, the photo lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the lighting stuff, right? Now, we were a bit scattershot last week because we kind of decided at the last minute to just jump in the studio and do that. And we had a bunch of questions. So we've still got questions tonight, but we're going to do this in a slightly more structured fashion. Now, as usual, your questions are always welcome. So if you have a question related to the lighting topic we're talking about or photography in general, feel free to drop that into the chat. We welcome those all of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. We're
going to start with some flash basics. And some of this we covered the last 2 weeks ago when we were in the studio. But so some of those things we'll cover in less depth than we already did. But if you need clarification, let us know. Classic Mama's here. Hey, that's Vicky, right? Vicky, that's you? And Vincent says, did you see the profound, underwhelmed reception that the new Nikon D7500 got? Price $400 too high. With its, I think the retail was $1,289. Yeah, I saw a lot of people talking about it. I was kind of underwhelmed by it, but I'm kind of at this point where, I mean, all new cameras sort of underwhelm me. And that's not really true, but at the same time, it's, you know, we beat this drum. Like every camera basically is a good camera. So it's really hard to go wrong.
Yeah. It seems like with the technology and the cameras, for whatever reason, they seem to be at a plateau with only minor variances in them right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as evidenced by the D7500, which, you know, is sort of a hybrid of the D500 and D7000 series cameras.
Yeah. Jeff received my print. That's good. Glad it showed up, Jeff.
That's awesome. Oh, that's Carrie. I'm sorry, Carrie. I apologize.
It's hard to keep track of everybody.
Oh, Emmanuel. Yeah. Emmanuel. I want to share that clip art you shared with everybody here on the chat. So on the blab, we'll do that at the end of the show. I want to get into the lighting because I don't want to waste any more time because this will go super fast. Yeah. So let's talk about lighting, right? First thing we want to talk about is an understanding of the difference between the two types of light. And this is super important because it impacts how your camera responds to your light sources. And we talked about this the last time, so we're not going to go like super in depth here, but we want to make this clarification because this is one of the most critical things that you need to grasp when it comes to working with flash photography. And that's the fact that this light source is fundamentally different from these light sources here. And the difference is the fact that these light sources are always on, and this light source is only on for a very tiny fraction of a second. And this is a great thing because that tiny fraction of a second allows you to put a lot of power into the light and put it in a fairly small package, right? That's one of the really great things. The other great thing is that it allows you to control these two different lights independent of each other. So that when you take a picture, you can control how much of this light shows up in your scene and how much of this light shows up in your scene. And we're going to get to how that control comes together down the way a little bit. But one of the first things we need to understand is the power and capabilities of this flash. And when I say this flash, I just mean this type of flash, a speed light, not this specific flash that I'm holding. So, Mark, I'm going to do a little bit of setup here. Do you want to explain to them what the guide number is and how that relates to the power of a flash?
Yep, absolutely. So the guide number, all flashes have different powers. So the guide number is sort of the way that you can use that guide number, for lack of a better term, as a guide to how much power it's going to put out. So basically, the higher the guide number is, the more power that it puts out at a full pop. So like if you have like one that's a guide power of say 50, and then you have another one that's a guide power of 60, the 60 is going to give you more light output at the same distance. Now, I know there's some formula that the guide number actually represents, and to be honest, I don't get into the technical stuff like that, so I'm not exactly sure how the guide number relates to actually giving you an actual output number per se, but the typical rule of thumb is the higher the number is, the more power that it actually puts out.
That's right. And the actual formula is something that is worth knowing, but only in as much as you understand the capabilities of your flash. So I'll explain that in a minute, but I just want to check in on the chat here. Let's see. TC says, I'd rather photograph a new subject than get a new camera. 100% agree with that. And then Bill says he picked up a Nuir speed flash and it has worked out great. Yes, I love that flash. In fact, I don't know which one you got, but I have the Nuir TT560 right here. I love this little flash. 35 bucks. This is a bang up deal. I could almost buy like 10 of these. You know what I mean? All right.
TC hasn't bought his mannequin yet.
You need to get your mannequin. Peter, the SHP logo in the corner is not new. That's actually been there for a couple of years or so now, which is kind of funny. All right. So what I'm doing here is setting up two flashes to demonstrate the difference in power output. Now, that guide number is given to you as a distance, and it'll be given as meters, feet, or both. So as of right now, I'm setting up two separate flashes. This Yongnuo YN660 has a guide number of 66, if I remember correctly. It's either 60 or 66 meters. Mark, would you mind looking that up for me?
Yep, I can do that for sure.
Well, this isn't the Nuir. This is a Godox BT560. This has a guide number of 35 meters. Now, why is it a distance, and what the hell does that mean? What that distance is telling you, what that number is telling you, is how far the farthest subject could be away from your flash and still have your flash illuminate the subject decently enough that you could take a picture that would be quote-unquote well exposed. And when we talk about well exposed, that's a fairly relative term, but in sort of camera terms, it would be like 18% gray at an exposure value of 0, which is always the camera's target for exposure.
It's 66.
Now, it is 66. Okay.
Yes, it is 66.
So what that means is this flash right here, which is, again, the Yongnuo YN660, this could photograph a subject that is 66 meters away from me. That's what, like 180, about 200 some feet or something like that. This one can photograph a subject that's 35 meters away. So that is a little over half the power of this one right here. Now, what that translates to is intensity as well. The measurement is given in distance, but in order to reach that distance, it means that this light needs to be able to put out more power. And I want to give you guys a demonstration of that. So this is going to be a little bit bright, but what I'm going to do is fire two flashes, one flash at a time, and we'll do it at Lisa here. And this is going to be like a blast of light. We're going to start with the Yongnuo, and I'm actually going to set my camera settings to give this flash I'm probably going to have to set my aperture like f22 or something, because I do want to blast it at full power. But to give us a relatively decent exposure on Lisa, I'm at f22. You guys also should now be able to see my settings on the lower part of the screen there, my camera settings. Okay, so first shot, that's my dead shot, just double checking to make sure everything's working, which is me faking the fact that I forgot to turn on my transmitter.
It happens. There we go.
Okay, so there's the shot of Lisa with this at full power. Now I'm going to turn this one off and turn this one on and take the same shot from the other angle, and it should be about twice as dark, because this one has half the power because of that guide number.
Yeah, that's something that RJ mentioned, which is definitely a good point, is that the guide numbers should be taken with a grain of salt, because obviously they probably sometimes overestimate what they claim that they actually are.
Yep, but I realized I forgot to do something which is very, very pertinent, because if you look at this shot that I just put up there, it actually doesn't look like it's half as bright as this shot. And the reason for that is because there was a different setting, the zoom setting, that I had changed on this flash. So I'm going to take another shot with this flash, and now it should be roughly twice as bright as the one that we're seeing on screen right now. Pray tell that I'm actually correct about this.
That's pitch black.
I keep forgetting to turn things on. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that one is significantly brighter than the one before it. And that's purely a function of the guide number. That just means that this one packs more power than this one. Now, the reason knowing that distance is worthwhile is because let's back up and we'll give an example, okay? Have you ever gone to a concert? I'm asking all of you, and I'd like to know in the chat, have you ever gone to a concert and been guilty of taking a camera with a flash and sitting back in the stands about 300 or 400 feet and taking pictures with your flash going off, or B, gone to the concert and noticed the hundreds and hundreds of other people doing that exact thing? Okay, so sound off in the chat because I want to know.
No, I don't think I've ever used a flash at one, but I've been shooting a concert and seen other people using the flash.
Right. I've seen people do it with their point and shoots with their smartphone cameras and whatnot. But here's the thing, right? If you have a point and shoot camera with that little pop-up flash, that has a guide number of like maybe 6 to 10 meters, about 20 to 30 feet, right? Which means if you were going to use that to take pictures at like a concert, you basically have to be in the front row for that flash to have any effect on the photo at all. Because if you're 200 feet back, by the time it gets all the way up to the performers and then hits the performers and then gets all the way back to the camera, the power is just, it's absolutely gone.
Yeah.
Now, RJ makes a really good point, and this is what we were going to get to next, which is the flash zoom. So I actually wanted to back up the chat and just catch up on it. Mark, do you want to explain flash zoom while I catch up on the chat?
Yeah, sure. So basically the flash zoom is most flashes when you're working with them, you have the ability to literally the head internally zooms in and out. So if you are saying have a zoom of 50 millimeter, it's going to be a wider spread of light. Whereas if you're shooting at like 100 millimeter, it's going to be more straight on and intense. And it's basically there to represent the focal length of the lens that you're using. So if you're shooting at 100 millimeter lens, and ideally you want the lens that your flash set at 100 millimeter as well too. That way everything sort of matches together and you're not wasting light. Because if you're shooting at 100 millimeter and you have your flash set at 35 millimeter, you get so much light being spread out that's not being utilized. And I guess vice versa is if you're shooting wide, like if you're shooting with say a 35 millimeter lens and you're shooting at 100 millimeter or 100 millimeter zoom on your flash, then you almost have a spotlight effect. But that being said, you could use that as an effect if you want it to.
Right, very much so. Now, one of the important things to recognize about that is while that zoom function on the flash was originally intended to spread the beam out to cover the same angle that the lens is catching, like Mark just explained, you can use this function creatively, which is super cool. And I'll show you how and why in just a moment. But first, I want to make sure that you can actually see what we talk about when we mean zoom. So I've got a flash right here. And it's a little hard to see, possibly, I'm pretty sure over YouTube. But you've got this little piece of plastic on the front is called the Fresnel. And that just blocks and protects the actual light bulb or flash tube that's inside the flash itself. And so with that light right there, right behind the Fresnel, when the light comes out of the flash, it's able to spread out and go all over the place, okay? The zoom extends the barrel of the head, or if you have a fancy flash, this is a mechanical, this is a literally do-it-yourself zoom, which is good for demonstration purposes, but fancier flashes don't work this way. But now, with this pulled all the way out, what I've done is I've taken the bulb, the light bulb in here, and I've moved it back to around here. And what that means is when the bulb goes off, all of this extended head that's now in front of the bulb is going to act like a tunnel or a snoot.
Like a snoot, yeah.
Exactly. And force that light into a tighter beam. Doing that does two things. That actually makes the light more powerful. So when you're looking at the guide number always accounts for the flash being zoomed at its maximum zoom, at the longest possible focal length zoom for the flash. So, you know, most flashes, like, where did I put it? I don't have it here. Like this, like the Yongnuo, this has a maximum zoom of 105 millimeters. So if you read in a manual for something like this, it'll say guide number, 58 meters at ISO 100 and 105 millimeters. And that means that that's like the most powerful that the flash can be. If you change that zoom to a wider point, then the flash actually loses power. And so I want to show you that because we've got the shot already on camera of Lisa with this flash at its maximum. It wasn't even at the maximum zoom. The flash was just at 35 millimeters, which matched that flash over there. Now I'm going to take it, first of all, to its minimum zoom. That's 14 millimeters. And in order to do that, I actually have to pull out this little diffusion panel. So what this diffusion panel does is actually catch the light as it comes out of the flash and bounce it around a little bit to spread it out even wider to cover a wider angle area. So at its widest point, it's even going to be less powerful than it already was. And we'll take this shot and pop Lisa in the face with a bunch of light.
I was going to say, you could probably demonstrate that easily on just the black background. You can see how wide the light spreads versus not spreading.
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's just do it right on the background. I'm just going to pop this to make sure it's hitting the background, which it is. All right, so here we go. Okay, so.
It's black.
It's black, right? It's black. And now I'm going to take the zoom and put it all the way up to its maximum zoom, which, as I said, on this flash is actually 200 millimeters, 199 millimeters. That should measurably show up. If not, we'll bring it. Yeah. Do you see the difference there?
Yeah, it showed up.
Do you see how much brighter it is? All I did was change the zoom on the flash head. So that serves a power purpose right there, right? But it also serves another purpose, which gets down to coverage in diffusion. So I want to show you guys this, because this is something that's super important when it comes to using one of these, an umbrella or any other kind of diffusion surface. But let's check and see if we've got any questions in here.
Yeah, well, TC was asking what flash I was holding up. It's just the Yongnuo 660. He was saying it looked bigger than yours, but this is actually the same one Spyros has on the stand on the right-hand side. So
that's the one that you sent me on Amazon without telling me to review, so that I could then send it to you.
Yeah,
confused the heck out of me too.
Oh, I like to keep you on your toes.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So Steve's got a flash coming. That's awesome.
Yeah,
TC says he hates math.
Bill Miller had a question too. He was asking about batteries, which is actually in our basics list. And basically his question is, he says, I'm sure it depends on the flash, but to help on how much equipment I should carry around with me, can we expect the batteries to last in the flash? And then wondering whether he should carry spare fresh batteries in the flash or with him as well. And pretty much it depends on how much you're going to be using the flash and how quickly you're using it too, because the faster you use it, the hotter the flash gets, and it's harder on the batteries when you do that. But I think I can typically, I've never actually calculated, but I can usually get a couple hundred shots out of a fresh set of rechargeable batteries in it. And I always carry spares with me anyways, but I'd say probably if they're good batteries and it's a good flash, you can probably expect to get anywhere between 200 and 400 shots out of a flash.
Yeah, it's absolutely, like Mark said, going to depend upon how much you're using it and how intensely. The hotter you make it, the faster those batteries are going to drain. That being said, and I think RJ already mentioned it in the chat, always carry spare batteries. And if you're going to be using it heavily, carry lots of spare batteries. As an example, this isn't even all of my batteries, but I have got literally handfuls of batteries that I always bring when I'm shooting. Like this is like about half, I don't know how well you guys can see this. This is about half of my batteries that I always bring with when I'm out shooting. And in part because I have 6 flashes and 5 triggers, and they all use these batteries. So you need loads of them.
Yeah,
and go ahead.
This is higher end flashes too. Like, I'm not sure if you can see this or not on my young mule, but it actually has a port right here where you can plug in an external battery pack, so you'll get even longer time out of your flash. Yes, absolutely. And that's a nice thing. So we've got a question from Kevin, and he says, does having the flash in a wider zoom extend the life of the batteries? That does not, but let's talk about your power output will have. Exactly. If you're shooting power output will. Yeah, if you're shooting full power, bang, 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 one after another, it'll drain the batteries like crazy. You're better to shoot at like quarter power or half power and adjust either your ISO or your aperture to compensate for the lack of light output, and it'll last a heck of a lot longer. Exactly. And I want to show you what he's talking about. On the back of my flash here, you can see it says 1-to-1. Hopefully you guys can see it on screen. Let me turn on the light. Yeah. There. It says 1-to-1 right there. That's full power. That means it's using all of the power in the capacitor in one charge. And then it has to draw all of that power out of the batteries and refill it. If you were shooting at a lower power, as Mark said, so you could go all the way down to like 1/128th power, you could probably shoot 1/128th power like all day and all night on just one set of batteries, because that's just sipping on the power like somebody nursing a drink all night long. So the power is what will help you preserve your batteries. But sometimes you just need that monster full 1-to-1 power. And if that's the case, absolutely, yeah, then you should use it, but make sure you have batteries. Yeah, mainly the main reason you might need to be shooting at full power is if you're trying to overpower another light source. That's typically the main reason you would need to be shooting at full power. Yeah. Bill said, "Holy crap, that's a lot of batteries." Before I forget, I want to say thank you very much to Candy for that super chat. That was very kind of you. Yep. You know, if you folks want to support what we do here and support this show, there's that little $sign at the bottom of the chat. This is not required. You do not have to do this. But if you wanted to support us, you could hit that little $sign and make a little donation that comes right to us. It's something that we sure as heck would appreciate. But either way, we love doing this. So back to absolutely. So it's not going to stop us from doing it. That's exactly. For sure. So let me show you what the zoom does when it comes to a diffusion surface. I've currently got the flash set to 1/8 power, and I've got the zoom set to 199 millimeters. And I'm just going to take a picture of the front of the umbrella. And when I do that, you should see something pretty interesting in the photograph. Okay. Look at that. You want to tell them what's going on there, Mark? Yeah. So sorry, what was your zoom setting on that one?
The zoom setting on the flash is 199 millimeters.
Okay, so basically, what this picture is showing is the intensity. Well, not necessarily the intensity of the flash, but how much of the flash is going through the umbrella, I guess, for lack of a better term. So, like typically, if you're using a modifier like an umbrella, you'd actually be shooting. Probably, it depends on the umbrella, but probably like around 35 to 50 millimeter on your flash zoom. So it's basically the light is distributing itself throughout the whole umbrella to give you more even light.
Right. So right now it's super tight, which means I'm not taking advantage of the entire diffusion surface, which means the light is not going to be as soft as it could be. Now that's not necessarily bad. In some cases, you might want to do what we just did here on purpose because you want the light soft, but not like super duper soft. But now I'm going to just change the zoom. Again, I'm not changing the power at all. I'm just pulling out that little diffusion panel I showed you guys earlier, which defaults the zoom on the flash to 14 millimeters. And I'm going to take another photo. And now look at how much more of the umbrella is catching light. That means almost this whole entire surface is being used to diffuse that light and make it softer. So if you're taking photos and you want this super soft light, you should use your flash at its maximum zoom, or minimum zoom, the widest angle, to fill that diffusion surface as much as possible. Okay,
Yep.
Had a question from, and I'm a little behind on the chat, so I apologize, but Steve had a question. He said, TTL or manual to learn to start out trying some off-camera flash. I think I know what you're going to say, Mark, but what do you think?
I'm a fan of manual, whether it's on the camera or off the camera. But
100%.
But that being said, shooting flash off camera, you can do TTL, but it gets a little trickier because you need to have the right transmitter and receiver that'll actually speak in TTL versus like if you just get like a cheap young mule or something like that, it's just going to be literally just talk back, and it's literally just going to be a signal going to the receiver saying flash. It's not actually taking a reading from how much power is coming out of the flash and then sending it back to the camera so it knows what to do. So that's kind of how it works. You can get the wireless triggers that will do TTL, but it's more money typically.
Right. And in terms of learning, my recommendation is absolutely to learn it in manual. Now, TTL is okay.
TTL is good in a pinch, but it doesn't really teach you anything.
Exactly, right? Because TTL is essentially auto mode for your flash. And there are two problems with TTL. One is being auto mode, it makes all the decisions for you. Now, there are ways to override that when using TTL, which means you can use TTL, but essentially still be shooting manually. And then when you do that, you're essentially reducing TTL to just being the communication system that you use to control your flash. And if you do that, that's fine. But the other problem with TTL, there's three problems, I should say, not two. And thank you very much, Kevin, for the super chat. That is very, very kind. Again, we appreciate that. So the second problem with TTL is the system that TTL uses to communicate when you're shooting off camera. In every system, every proprietary system, except for right now, Canon, it relies on light transmission rather than radio transmission. And the light transmission is, let's just say it's sketchy and not 100% reliable. Not that radio transmission is perfect, but radio transmission is an order of magnitude better than light transmission in terms of reliability and range. Ooh. Mark, you still there? Oh, I think I dropped out of the call here. Just a moment, folks. You there, Mark?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, sorry about that, guys.
Well, I think it's my fault. My internet connection went for a poo, and I had to switch to my home network.
Okay. So So Steve said he ordered the Newer VK752 Pro, which is TTL and comes with the triggers. Now, having TTL is not bad, but when it comes to learning, I do recommend you do it in manual. And the reason, the third reason, and the main reason that I recommend you learn flash in manual is that TTL recalculates the flash exposure every single time you take a photo, which means you could have varying power outputs and varying flash output settings from shot to shot to shot. And you might be super confused and super annoyed by that because you don't understand what's happening because your flash and camera are making decisions that you can't see and you don't know about. But if you're using the flash in manual, then you're setting the power and you're setting the zoom, and you know what the results will be every single shot because nothing will change until you change it. So, that's why I recommend using using manual. Sorry.
Yeah.
TC says, did you see my question about the warning showing up in my viewfinder? I did, and I did some research, but TC, we need to know what that warning is. So if you can try to capture it, or if you know what it said, let us know in the chat, and we can try to address it more directly. But basically, my guess would be that it might be warning you, because if it's happening in low light, then it might be warning you about your shutter speed, even though you're using flash or something like that. But I'm guessing on that because I just don't know.
Yeah, and are you trying to do it in TTL or are you doing it in manual?
Right. That's a good question. Bill says, Houston, we have a problem. Not sure what.
No, that could have been when I kicked out, maybe.
Okay, yeah. All right, so what I wanted to do now is address a question that Lord Bacchus had that actually is something that came up with somebody else. But let's get back to the basics here. What have we talked about, and what do we still need to cover there? So we talked about the guide number. We didn't talk about the recycle time. That's something we got to hit. That's pretty important.
Yeah, I can quickly touch on that with the recycle time.
Excellent.
If you're shooting at full power, recycle time, especially if your batteries if you've been using the batteries for a little bit, the recycle time can take, depending on the flash, a couple of seconds to maybe 10 to 15 seconds, depending, like I said, depending on the flash and the batteries. But the lower your power is, the flash recycle time is actually pretty fast. And like if you're shooting on a low enough power, you can almost sometimes actually motor drive, and the flash will probably flash. Like if you did say, let's say 10 shots, motor drive, if your flash is on low enough power, you could probably get anywhere between 8 to 10 shots where the flash is actually triggered because it recycles that fast.
Yep, and I can give you a demonstration of that. So what I'm going to do, let's see, I need the right flash. I need the one that's gonna make some noise. That's this one right here. Okay, I'm gonna turn on this YN560 flash, and I'm gonna set it to full power. All right, so you guys should hopefully be able to see that full power 1-to-1 on the flash. Now I'm gonna pop the flash, just hitting the pilot button, and then I'm gonna hold it up by my face so that the microphone picks up. After the flash pops, start counting. It should take about 6 seconds, and then we'll hear a beep. And that beep is the flash saying, okay, I've recharged and I'm ready now. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It didn't beep. Oh, it's because it was off.
No, I think I have my beeper turned on mine.
Hold on, let me turn my beeper back on. There we go. My beeper's on now. Okay, sorry. Did you want to do it, Mark?
Well, it doesn't matter if your beeper's on. You can do it now.
Okay, I got it. Here we go. Let's do it again. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It still didn't beep. What's wrong with you?
Okay, maybe I'll do it then.
Yeah, you do it. Why is this not beeping for me?
Oh, wonder if it doesn't beep when you do it in the test mode, maybe. No, I don't think it beeps in test mode.
That's weird. All right, so let me put a trigger on it and do it that way. Okay, so this should do it. Turn it on. And 2, 3, 4. There it went. So it was about 5 seconds. Yeah, 4 or 5 seconds. Okay, so now that we've got that, now what I'm going to do is turn the flash down to 1/128th power. And when I do that again, the beep will be immediate. So here we go. There it is. That beep, that means it's ready. Because it's at such low power, it's not using the full charge of the capacitor, so you can fire again almost immediately. Whereas at full power, you're going to have to wait that 5 or 6 seconds. That's just the nature of this kind of light. So what you need to not do if you're shooting in full power is be boom, 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 just hammering that trigger, because you're going to do that, and 1 out of every 4 shots, yeah, is going to be okay, and all the other ones are going to be dark.
Yep.
Steve has a question. He says, any way to estimate quickly on flash power output to start, or just try and check in manual? Any general rule to follow? Yeah, it's kind of a thing that you get a feel for, to be perfectly honest, Steve. There isn't really a general rule. I mean, I can kind of give you some guidelines that I have based upon the equipment that I know and use, right? So as an example, when I'm shooting with this kind of a setup right here, which is a flash in an umbrella with maximum diffusion covering the full area with the widest zoom, and I'm taking like a headshot, right? Like this here, aimed like this roughly to light up the subject. Let's just set it up. I would set the flash at about 1/8 or 1/16 power. My camera will be set, I got to change my aperture, down to about 7.1, which is typically what I end up shooting in the studio. And that should be a pretty good exposure on the subject without me having to futz around all that much to change it. Oh, that was way too bright.
Yeah, you're a little hot.
Yeah, I'm way too hot. So, and that kind of proves the point, though, that it's almost always, if you're going to do okay, let me back up. If you're going to do it the way that I do it, which is take a shot, check the camera, adjust the flash, take a shot, do that 2 or 3 times till you get it dialed in, it's going to take you a couple shots. And seeing what I saw there, I could nail this in 1 shot here. I'm going to go down to 1/32 because that's about 2 stops too hot. And this should be a pretty good shot right here.
Oh, TC's leaving. See you, TC.
See you, TC. Thanks for hanging out, bud.
Yep.
Did it come through?
It's still hot.
Oh, you know what's going on here? This stupid flash was firing along with it. That's why. That's why. So let's go back to that 16th power and see if I was right. See, I was right.
Yeah.
I was a little confused. Well, I'm like, why was that not working? That usually works perfectly for me. So, yeah. And that's because this one was triggering, right? So right there, that kind of shows you, like, just like that, I know that particular power setting works.
Yeah, and you can tell something was wrong.
Yep. Yeah, RJ caught it in the chat too. Turn off the other camera flash.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally forgot this one was turned on. And this one was firing via optical slave mode, meaning that when it sees another flash go off, it just fires. It's a dumb triggering feature that can be really handy in certain situations.
Oh, I've used that quite often.
Yep. So that's kind of how it works. You basically get a feel for your equipment, and then you know in certain situations and settings what to do. Or, Mark, you want to show them the light meter?
Yes.
Because this can give you exactly the power and the settings in basically a shot. So that's a light meter.
Yeah. I use a light meter fairly often that way.
Yeah. You explain how it works, because I've never used one.
Yeah, so Spyros never uses one. So basically, the light meter, you can measure ambient light, you can measure your flash power, and etc. and so on. But so if you're in the studio, you can you set your lights up, and you hold the meter. Typically, it's just under the chin. And when the flash triggers, it tells you right away what a perfect exposure would be. And so basically there's no guesswork. It's literally whatever it says on your light meter, you go over to your camera, set your settings, and away you go.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, you have to tell the light meter your shutter speed and the ISO, and it'll tell you what aperture to set at. Plus, also the light meter will also tell you whether or not you have any ambient light coming in as well too, because it gives you a percentage wise. So if you're shooting outdoors, it can be very handy as well too. If you're looking for just a little bit of fill flash, you can, for fill flash, typical would be about a 30% flash. Works good for fill, but if you're looking to maybe overpower, then you're going to want even more. You might want upwards of 80% flash versus the ambient light. So the meter can be very handy when it comes to, especially when you're first learning out. So learning the flash, so you can kind of quickly see how everything works, how adjusting the power on your flash can make changes, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and both ways are valid, right? Like there are lots of photographers who swear by the light meter and think that doing what I do, which is just using the camera basically as the light meter, is stupid and idiotic, and I should be run out of town. And there are just as many other photographers that are just like me, who are perfectly comfortable just using the camera as the light meter, and spending, in some cases it might take a little bit longer, but I shouldn't say I've never used a light meter. That's actually a lie. I spent about 2 years working for a portrait studio, taking portraits of kids in daycare centers, and I used a light meter to set that up. But I didn't really know what I was doing back then. He just told me, you set these up, you turn this on, you do this with the light meter, and as long as it says F16, you're fine. And like, I knew what F16 was, but I didn't really know that much about flash yet. So I just kind of understood that this was making sure that everything was balanced out correctly. Yeah. And that's a situation where you can do that. But at the same time, once you figure something out like this, right? Like, I don't need a light meter to tell me that. I just do what I do. And I know, okay, 1/16 power at about this distance with the umbrella, boom, it's going to work. It's going to give me the look that I want, which is that right there.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. You absolutely don't need to have a light meter. That's especially once you get the hang of everything, because then you kind of know how everything works together. Like, I use a light meter just because it's convenient. For lack of a better term, I can quickly set things up. But if I didn't have my light meter and I'm working away and taking pictures, I can easily work without the light meter, just because I know how everything works. Now, sometimes if you're using multiple lights and you have a specific ratio where you want to have one light at 1 power and you want the other light to literally be exactly at half power, the light meter will tell you that. Versus doing it by hand, it might take a little bit more fussing to get it perfect, but for most of the time you can be close and no one's going to know the difference anyways.
Yes, and to the light meter, the main reason I don't use a light meter and never have is because back when I was starting to learn flash, I couldn't afford one. And so I just did without. And because I couldn't afford one at this point, I just, now it doesn't make any sense for me to use one, because my workflow doesn't account for a light meter. So I would have to change how I work, and I don't really need to do that. So you can use it or not use it. It doesn't matter. And it can be super helpful if you're the kind of person who likes to be able to go boom, dial, boom, click. Okay, everything is spot on. The light meter is basically a camera without a lens and without a viewfinder. It just gives you the reading from the lights, and you would make adjustments to make sure everything works. So it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, but Brian was asking whether it was this iconic L358, and it is.
Okay. And we had a question, and then Lord Bacchus has a question, and I want to do a demo on this, because I think it's a really good thing that people can learn from. So first, and hello, Danny. Thanks for joining, bud. Wahed Mohammed, and I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly. He says, I have a question regarding the light fall off. We know that incident light falls quickly depending on the distance between the source and the subject. And then he continues, however, when the camera sensor is reading reflective light from the subject, I'm wondering why the distance between the subject and the camera doesn't matter. Okay, that's an interesting question. It's because the distance does matter, but what's happening is the light is traveling to the subject and bouncing off of the subject and then traveling back to the camera. And that's giving you, when it hits the camera, your light meter in the camera is giving you the incident light reading on your exposure indicator, right? So if you have your settings set to, let's just say ISO 100 with an aperture of f5.6 and a shutter speed of 1/100th of a second, and you're pointing your camera at the subject, and it tells you that your exposure is -2, then it's telling you that the incident light is hitting the subject and traveling back to the camera. And if you take a photo with that particular power of light coming off of the subject, your image will be underexposed by 2 stops. So what you would need to do then is change your settings to let in more light or increase the ISO or whatever to bring that exposure back to a 0. The amount of light bouncing off the subject and coming to the camera won't change, but the amount of light the camera is able to receive will based upon the settings changes that you make. I hope that makes sense and clarifies what you were wondering about. Okay, so Lord Bacchus says he's taking photos of fire twirler people, I think. And he wants to
but potpourri or I don't remember. I can never remember.
I think.
Yeah, poi, that's it, yeah.
Yeah. So he says, my subjects are moving. I'm shooting long exposures of fire poi, and I want to freeze the face at the end of a frame. Okay, so I need to set up a tripod because I got to put my camera on the tripod. And the flash is the key to this, okay? Because when the flash fires, it fires very briefly. So you might be doing a long exposure of 2 seconds, but the flash is only going to fire for something like 1/10,000th of a second. And so whatever's happening in that 1/10,000th of a second will be frozen. And the rest of it will be moving because of the 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever second long exposure that you had. So I'm putting my camera on the tripod here. And what I'm going to do is grab, I've got some EL wire, which is not, I'm not a fire poi, but it is a continuous light source. And I'm going to wave it around, but I'm going to use the flash to freeze me at a point in waving that around. So let me just aim this at Lisa, and then I'll take her place. And focus, and I'm going to have to use my self-timer. All right, so settings, let's see, self-timer. Were you going to say something, Mark?
No, I was going to say the manual focus, so it doesn't change focus.
Yep, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So let me get that locked on.
While you're doing that, just there's been a couple of questions about various meters and whether they're any good. And for the most part, if you are looking to get a light meter, as long as it actually is a light meter that will register flash, then you're pretty much any light meter is going to be decent.
Yep. Okay, so I turned the lights off. Give me a second to boost the ISO on the camera. And you guys hopefully should be able to see some of what's going on here in the studio. And I'll change that back when I turn the lights back on. But we need the ISO down, or the lights down, so that this exposure will catch this blue EL wire that I've got right here. So you guys should hopefully be able to see me holding this.
Yep.
I'm going to set my camera exposure for, I got to check the ambient here first of all. I'm going to go 1 second at f7.1 as a starting point and see what this looks like. So I have no idea how well this is going to work. I'm totally spitballing this. I'm moving this, and I'm moving my body. And I forgot to turn something on, so nothing went off. Okay, that's good. Oh, I know what happened. The flash went to sleep. Okay, so let's do this one more time. I'm going to move this out of the scene. I apologize for the sort of last minute nature of this. But I'm moving around, and you should be able to see that in the photo. And yet, you can see the movement, but I'm also frozen, okay? And let me change the camera setting and then turn the lights back on. You want to explain that, Mark?
Yeah, so basically what's happening is, did you fire the flash? Did the flash go off at the start or the end of the exposure? I didn't.
It went off at the start. We'll address Lord Bacchus's situation more specifically, but once you explain what just happened here.
Right. Okay. So basically, what happened is the flash fired, and it gave the exposure for Spyros, and basically it froze him. But then, because the shutter was being dragged for, I think you said it was a second.
Correct.
It caught the motion of the light spinning around, and because I'm assuming with the 1 second exposure, you're still no ambient light getting other than from the LEDs. No ambient light was getting into the camera. So
yeah,
so
there might have been a little bit of ambient, but
right.
I think it was reading at minus like 1 or 2 or so. So
right,
it was dark enough, yeah, to kill that. So this is the basics of what you need to do in order to take a photograph of a moving subject with ambient light, but freeze that subject. Now, Bacchus is saying, like, what power on the flash, what aperture? I'm going to tell you guys what I use, but bear in mind that this particular situation is going to be different from what you're doing when you're out shooting the poi people. Okay?
Yeah, it depends on the setup, basically.
Exactly. So my camera settings are on screen in the lower left-ish hand corner. It should be what does it say there, Mark? I can't read it. It's 1 second. F. What did I set it to? 7.1 or something?
I can't tell what it says. My signal's not coming in that well, so it's pixelated on me.
Okay. It's 1 second, f7.1, and an ISO of 200, which is my base ISO on this camera. This flash, I didn't change. So this flash is set at 1/16th power with the zoom at 14 millimeters. And Lord Bacchus, if you want to do this, you would need different settings, right? Because you're not going to put the flash right here for the poi dancer, because he's going to be waving fire sticks around and light your umbrella on fire and knock your flash over. And then you'll be all upset because your gear will be wrecked. So, right, you might have the flash, like, back up here, as an example, with the dancer back here. And then you could still use the umbrella, but you'd probably need to up the power to, I'd say maybe 1/4 power. In fact, let's give it a whirl and see. Let's try it at 1/4 power. What do you think, Mark? 1/4 power?
Sure.
All right, so 1/4 power. I'm going to boost the ISO on the camera again so you guys can see. So it's going to get super bright here for a moment, and then I'm going to turn off the light so you guys can't see again. And we'll take this shot again.
Did everything go to sleep?
It might have. Let me pop it up to wake it up. Okay, now it's awake. So, you do my funky poi dance. Woo.
You're hired.
Hired. Okay, so I think that probably came out pretty well in terms of the lighting. How did it look, Marcus?
It looks pretty good on the screen from what I can see on my pixelation.
Okay, so if you're going to be firing the flash at a greater distance, you're going to want to use more power in order to expose the subject. And if you can take something like this out to the scene, Lord Bacchus, a stand and a flash on with an umbrella, you'll get a more pleasing light than if you have the flash on camera just blasting into the subject. Because if you do that, it'll look more like this. Let me show you what it'll look like. We're just going to put this one on the camera.
And it will work on the camera, because he just said that he doesn't actually have a stand or an umbrella. Yeah, it will definitely work on the camera.
It'll work on the camera, but it may not be as nice, is what I'm saying. So you'll need to point the flash at the subject, which is how I've got the camera currently set up right here. And this flash head doesn't zoom, so it's just at, it's probably 35 millimeters. Yeah, whatever it is. So I'm just going to pull out the diffuser and make it a little bit wider. And I'm spitballing this, and I'm setting the power to 1/32nd power. And let's see how this looks. But Lord Bacchus, I would recommend getting an umbrella and a trigger and a stand for your flash. You don't have to spend a lot of money on this, right? Like you could get an umbrella, a stand, and a set of triggers for right around $50 or $60. Now, the other thing is the curtain sync, and we haven't talked about that. Okay, so I'm doing my woo-woo dance. Woo-woo-woo-woo-woo. I might as well make sounds, too. I think I had the exposure set a little low, so I'm going to pop it up a few stops. 1, 2. I forgot this was a guide number of 35 to begin with, so probably need, we'll go up 3 stops on that. I feel like a dork.
Yeah. There you go.
That was a better exposure.
Yeah, the exposure looks good.
Yeah, so that's kind of the look you can expect to get if you have the camera on flash. And that's not awful if you have the flash on camera. And that's not terrible, but if you can, this will give you a better, more pleasing look. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. Whew.
Something I want to add to this subject while we're on the subject is
I want to check the chat. So you go ahead.
Yeah, when you're doing shots like this, is if there is a little bit of ambient light, like if you're doing it at night and say the moon is out, and I guess this is a good example, and say you're doing like a 30-second exposure where you're getting a lot more light in, is the flash will freeze it, but if there's still ambient light, you might still see the person as being blurry and a solid picture. So you might get some ghosting effect, for lack of a better term. And that whether you use first curtain or second curtain or front or rear curtain, depending on the system you're using, it can make a difference. Basically, if you use if the flash goes off at the start of the exposure, it'll freeze the subject, and then you end up with some possible mushy blur over top of the good exposure. And if you do the flash at the end, you might have the mushy exposure and then a nice solid nice frozen image at the end of the exposure, but you still end up with some of the mush from the movement that's been going on.
Right.
But like in this case in the studio here, because there isn't any ambient light, what we see of Spyros in the shot is basically all you see is him frozen, because that's the only thing that's lighting him is the flash.
Right. And I wanted to demonstrate that. Now, Lord Bacchus just said that he actually wants like the mushy exposure and the frozen. So then what you would do is just make sure that your ambient exposure is not blacked out at like -3 or something like that. And as long as you have your ambient exposure set to the point where you will see that motion and the ghosting, then it'll show up in the image with the flash. So you would set your ambient at maybe a 0 exposure, maybe -1, maybe +1. You set your ambient exposure just like you've always been setting it to take these photos of these koi dancers already. All you need to do is add the flash, figure out the power to get that freezing that you want, and then use the flash as part of the shot. Now, when you do that, you said you wanted the shot at the end. And the only way you can get it at the end is to get a flash that is TTL capable with your camera. And the reason for that is the flash needs to be able to communicate with the camera so that the camera can say, don't fire the flash at the beginning, fire the flash at the end. And certain flashes have that capability and certain don't. So what you would want to do, if you need help picking out a flash that is second curtain capable for your camera, Lord Bacchus, you can fire me or Mark an email or a message or whatever, and we can help you pick one out. But if you're okay with first curtain, use the current flash you have and start testing this setup to figure out how to get the look you want to get. And then later on, if you want, you can bring in a second curtain flash or just add the umbrella stuff and just get it first curtain. Or the other option would be too is if you are doing a longer exposure, say 30 seconds, if you have a timer with you, you can manually trigger the flash getting near the end, like when you hit around the 25-second mark, and and at the end there probably wouldn't be that much movement
in that last few seconds that would affect it.
Yeah, that's actually a really excellent point. You could literally just set your camera up on a tripod, hold your flash, and then you could even maybe hold it off to the side and just count it off. And when you know you're 2 or 3 seconds in, or you know you're near the end, you just hit your test button on your flash and boom, it'll fire. And you'll get that effect towards the end, which is basically second curtain sync. So that's really good point, Mark. Thank you for bringing up. I didn't even think about that. That's brilliant. And I've done that before here in studio.
Brilliant ideas.
Right. Okay, Christopher.
Just don't expect it all the time.
Yeah. All right. So this has been super, super fun, guys. Real quick before we go, I want to know, I'm guessing we know the answer, but do you want us to do this again next week? Or would you like us to go back upstairs and do our regular, what used to be our regular sort of sit down and chat kind of thing? If you like us in the studio again, sound off in the chat right now before we go.
Yeah, and would you like us to continue with Flash, or you want us to touch on something else as well, too?
Yeah. If there's a different topic that you would like us to talk about, let us know, and we could possibly do other stuff out here in the studio. This live demonstration stuff is fun. We're not opposed to continuing with Flash. We could also do other stuff if you want.
Yeah, if it keeps you guys interested in continuing to watch, then absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So we've got some yeses. Bill has a question. He says, do we recommend things like the Gary Fong Chingadera that goes over the speed flash, the light sphere? We've talked about this before. I'm not a big fan of the Gary Fong light sphere. It's basically a Tupperware that you put up here. It does give you some diffusion on your flash. And if you're working on camera, and you want some sort of a diffusion, I would recommend a Rogue flash bender. I wouldn't get a Gary Fong. I'd get a flash bender. That's what I personally would get and would use. And
for that matter, if you're on a budget, you could even just get some Velcro like you have on the end of your flash. Like wrap some Velcro on your flash, and you could even take like some white craft board, for lack of a better term, like this sort of like styrofoamy stuff. Make yourself like a fan.
You mean like this stuff?
Yeah. Is that the flexible stuff?
This isn't flexible, but you can get the flexible craft foam. Here's the flexible stuff.
Then you kind of wrap it around your flash that's, but you get it in white.
You would want white, right? I got black because this is a flag meant to block and suck up light. But this stuff you can get at like the craft store for $1 for a 12 by 18 inch sheet, which is great for different light modifiers.
Yeah, and you put your flash straight up with the thing behind it, and it'll basically bounce some light off the ceiling and also push some light forward. It works quite well.
You're basically making yourself a Rogue flash bender. So what he's talking about
fraction of cost.
Getting something like this, but a bigger piece, and then Velcroing it to your flash like this. And if it's white, what's going to happen is the light's going to go up. If you're in a room with a ceiling, it'll bounce off of the ceiling and spread all around to your subject. But also because this is white, some of the light will bounce off of this straight ahead into your subject, which acts as a nice fill complement to the stuff that's bouncing off the ceiling.
Yeah. Now some flashes have this little thing built into it, but that's that's not really meant for bouncing that much light. That's more just to add some catch light into the eyes of your subject.
Yep, that's literally called the catch light card, and it's only meant to get enough light in that you catch that sparkle in the eye. You'll see a lot of people pulling that out when they're like running around, like shooting, run and gun, and it doesn't really do what I think a lot of people think they're doing. Right,
and what I have done in a pinch too, and it gives you a nice natural light color, is camera in one hand, flash on top of the camera. This is basically if I am running and gunning I got the flash in the hot shoes, I'll actually just hold my hand up like that.
Oh yeah,
and then that bounces some light too, so that works quite well in a pinch too.
Yeah, you're basically slapping the light forward. It's like a flash high five. Yeah. Jeff May, this is called the black foamy thing. That's exactly right. So Kevin wants to know what we think about flash soft boxes, and we've got a couple more minutes we can go with it. So Mark, you go ahead, and then I'll follow up with my thoughts.
Basically, the sort of the main modifiers, you get the umbrella, like a shoot through like Spyros has. There's also reflective umbrellas, and there's the soft boxes, and also the beauty dishes. And typically with the softbox it controls the light quite well because you don't have light spilling out everywhere. It can be more directional. And if you're really looking to get even more control, you can add a grid or an eggshell in front of it too, which basically just pushes the light all straight out. And so hopefully that answers the question.
It does. And Emmanuel just put up the clip art reminder. So give me 2 seconds. I just want to add on to what Mark said. Soft boxes and modifiers in general are amazing because they allow you to change the quality of the light that you're working with. Thomas Giuliano just made a comment about the small speed lights are always going to give you harsh lights. And when you keep the light source small like this, he's right, because a small light source by its nature is hard and specular. But if you use things like soft boxes and umbrellas and rogue flash benders, and yes, even Gary Fong light spheres, you are making modifications to your light, changing the size, which changes the quality of that light.
Yeah, but that being said, if you have an umbrella and you've had the umbrella 10 feet away from your subject, the light sources again become small, so it's not that much better than just using a bare flash. With like a softbox or an umbrella, you want to get that as close as you can to the subject without it being in your frame, so the light will wrap around and be really, really nice and soft. The closer the softer.
Right. And so if you want that super soft light, then you would want to get it as close as possible, like we did at the very beginning when I took that shot of Lisa. This is the clip art that Emmanuel did of me, which is super awesome. I love it.
That's cool.
I've been meaning to, but I haven't done it yet. I want to make that my profile picture on all my social media sites because I think I just love that. It's perfect.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, so everybody, thank you so much. I saw a bunch of yeses in the chat as far as doing this again. So we will plan on being out here in the studio again next Wednesday for our next edition of, I don't know if we keep calling this Photo Blab or not, but for this thing that we do.
Yeah, this thing that we do.
Yeah. So here's what I want from you guys. I want 2 things. One, all of you in the chat, what I want you to do is start hitting me and Mark up with things that you want to know about flash photography or other photography subjects that we can demonstrate here in the studio. Don't wait till next week, because the more prep time we have, the better prepared we can be to give you guys a really great demonstration and then answer questions related to it and go off and talk about other stuff.
Yeah, maybe we'll actually put a post in the group either tonight or tomorrow, either you or myself, and
yes,
we can build on that.
Yes. So
I really wish Facebook would let you pin more than one thing, though.
I know. I hate that. I really hate that. So let us know what you want us to talk about and cover next week, and we will do that. Mark and I were even talking about trying to take this show outside once it gets nice. Since I can live stream on my mobile device for YouTube, we can go on location, which I think would be super fun too. So I really like this. I really like this idea of stuff. Let us know what you want to see. Mark, any last words you want to share before we wrap this baby up?
No, I don't think so. We covered a lot tonight, I think. I hope it helped a lot of people out, and it was enjoyable. I like doing it this way.
Yeah, the only thing that would make it better is if you and I were in the same place. So we could do it in person.
One of these days.
Yep. We will do that. Oh, Tish has something. Would like to know about outside fill flash. Let's see what the weather's like. Maybe we'll take it outside next week.
We might have to do some testing to make sure we can figure out and get it working.
Yeah. So yeah, keep the stuff coming. Thank you very much for joining us, everybody. You know what you need to do. The most important thing is you guys got to get out there and take some damn photos. We love you guys and appreciate you guys. Have a great week. I'll be on Friday for my live stream editing as usual. So if you want to join me then, I'll see you then. Otherwise, have a great week and a great weekend. Good night, everybody.
Night, everybody.
And do after show while I figure out how to stop everything. All right. Good night, everybody.
Night.